Kia ora, Shmai. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. Thank you so much to all our regular listeners. If you're a new listener, thank you for dropping in and giving it a go. Hopefully this is the banger that makes you stay for the rest of them and you get into the back catalogue. With me today, I have a absolute legend, a true gentleman, just genuinely awesome human, Mr. John Berry. Hello, John. How are you?
Kia ora, Tim, and everyone. I'm well, thanks. Thank you for having me on the show. Good to see you.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. I've been keen to get you on the show for quite a while, so here we are. So would you be well known? Are you sort of notorious in New Zealand? I don't know, maybe. But for people who don't know who you are and what you do, yeah, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is John Berry. I'm co-founder and CEO of Pathfinder Asset Management, which is a fund management business. So we manage a KiwiSaver and manage funds. So we're investors. We're investors and we look after other people's money.
Nice. So for people, because we do have some international listeners, for people outside of New Zealand, KiwiSaver is essentially, you obviously know more about KiwiSavers than I do, but as I understand it, KiwiSaver is basically a government dictated superannuation type program where you as a employer or employee can put some money in towards the scheme, the government puts some money into the scheme, and hopefully when we're all older there's a bit of money left in it and you might get some cash out of it. That's kind of the theory.
Yeah, but the theory is that your fund manager should make you a lot of money, so when you're retired there's a lot in there. But yeah, it's a government mandated savings scheme.
Yeah,
for long-term savings.
Yeah, so same as like I suppose in the UK you have the pension, but I suppose slightly different. I mean, Aussie and New Zealand have superannuation where it's kind of this. I guess this seems, well, I've been out of the UK for quite a few years, so I might just be talking complete rubbish here. But in the UK, it used to be that there was like pretty much one pension fund that the government had, and then if you wanted a private pension fund, that's where you could choose to go and invest your cash or have a. Is that still the same, or are you out of the loop over there?
So the in the UK you had defined benefit schemes, which would essentially their final salary. So they give you a percentage of your final salary when you retire and pay that right through your retirement.
Yes.
Or you get a lump sum, which is how much you've saved plus your investment returns. And the New Zealand scheme is that scheme. It's how much you've saved plus your investment returns.
Yeah. Cool. And for people in the US, they're just lucky to get any money at any point and any holiday entitlements, from what I understand. So yeah, good luck. That's a whole different story.
Different story.
So tell us a bit about Pathfinder. There's obviously, all the major banks in New Zealand have a KiwiSaver scheme. There's a few other independent organisations that run KiwiSaver schemes. But so tell us about Pathfinder. What's different? Obviously, you're a B Corp. But what's the go with Pathfinder?
What's the go? Where are we different? I suppose the key difference I'd say is we're really open about the fact we take values into account with the way we invest, and our mission as a business is generating individual wealth and collective well-being. So it's this idea of I still want to make as much money. Our team still wants to make as much money as we possibly can for our investors. We just want to do it in a way that's positive for people, planet, and animals. So it has serves a positive purpose. And what does that actually mean in practice? Ethical investing to us has 5 different layers. Like we New Zealanders will be most aware of taking values into account as exclusions, so avoiding stuff, and that really is the main focus in New Zealand. For us, that's a good starting step. But look, I'd say if your mission is to want to change the world and want to positively change the world, just avoiding stuff, avoiding harm, is not going to do that in any sort of hurry. So yes, we have exclusions around fossil fuels, animal exploitation, weapons, a whole bunch of stuff. Really important because that helps me sleep better at night. It helps me feel better about the way I'm investing, but it won't necessarily drive change. And for us, that knocks out about 15% of all companies right around the world that we can invest in. But there's still this massive opportunity set of 85% of the market we can invest in. So for me, being an ethical investor, the key decision is not so much what you avoid, that is important, but it's actually where do you put your money is way more important.
Yeah, and I guess, well, again, you'll be able to educate me and the listeners. It seems like increasingly most KiwiSavers pension funds globally we now know that the ones we shouldn't be investing in, So most of them have taken some kind of stance against weapons. But that's a really interesting one. I don't want to get into it, but the whole, Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, on one level, we see lots of people going, yes, let's send money and guns to support people, but then on the other hand, we don't want to invest our KiwiSaver in guns. But we're happy to make that's just I think that's a whole, maybe that's a separate podcast we do on that one.
Well, just and like I say, we don't want to go too deeply into there's conflict in Ukraine, there's conflict in the Middle East, and the civilian cost is huge of these conflicts, and so we don't just boil it down to sort of numbers and investments, but there's a couple of approaches you can take as an ethical investor. One is to say, what is the future world I want to live in? Like, what does the world look like in 30 years' time? My grandchildren's world, what is that going to look like that I want it to be? How do I invest now to bring that about? So that would probably tend you to invest away from weapons because you don't see that as the future. Another approach could be to say, yes, weapons are important in the sense that democracies need to be able to defend themselves, and they have a right to defend their institutions and their country. But the problem with weapons manufacturers is you can't distinguish between a weapon that's used for defensive purposes and a weapon that's used for offensive purposes.
Yep.
So don't invest in them. And weapons companies are going to find capital. They're going to get capital to invest in. So, by us not investing in weapons, we're not, we're not stopping weapons companies defend democracy in countries, but we're just saying we can't just distinguish between offensive and defensive weapons. Let's stay clear.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's I think with a lot of this impact stuff, it's not black and white, because like you say, you what's that famous quote? If you want peace, you must prepare for war. It's for the entirety of human history. Has there been a day since humans have been around where there hasn't been some form of conflict, at least between maybe just two local tribes? I would hazard a guess, no. So it's really, really complicated. And then you add geopolitics and whatever else onto it, and it's way above my pay grade. But I remember when we first met, which would have been it was before the pandemic. So what's that? BP before pandemic. It would have been I think I met Paul, your co-founder, at the WOW Summit in Queenstown.
Yes.
That would have been what are we, 20, maybe 20. When did you guys start? Was it?
Well, the business has been going over a decade, but our KiwiSaver started 2019. I think that's when you would have.
I was going to say 2019 rings a bell. And then we met in Christchurch. You were down with Simon, and we had a nice cup of tea and a chat. And I do remember, just what you're talking about. Yes, there's some obvious things that we don't want to be putting our money into to create a better future, but I remember you sort of talking about the extra layers of screening that you put on your investments, and like the reputational index, and how in most funds, the pharmaceutical industry is considered what's the word I'm looking for? Not like sustainable, but they're kind of like an ethical investment. But you guys, is it a company? Is it in Denmark or the Netherlands or somewhere where there's like this reputational index that you put as a secondary screening beyond the obvious screening? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think you're talking about controversy screening.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah,
we're looking for sort of news flow, lawsuits, just what's happening in companies right now, looking for either bad behaviour or and I'll give you an example. Johnson & Johnson came on our screen when we saw they're selling talcum powder in North America, and executives were actually aware that there was a connection between talcum powder and cervical cancer. And so for us, they became like a cigarette company, and that they knew they were harming their consumers, but continued selling. And we sold, and that would have been back in 2017. So we sold J&J back then. And there's two lenses to that. One is, from an ethical perspective, I don't want to be investing in a company that has a culture like that, where it's okay to sell product that you are pretty sure is harming your end users. And then for an investment lens, an investment lens would say, this is indicative of culture and of poor culture. It's which often has financial consequences. And if there really is harm to hundreds of thousands of consumers, you are going to have hundreds of thousands of lawsuits down the track. And that has been problematic for Johnson & Johnson in the US, the lawsuits and the management drain in dealing with it. So, we'd say companies that behave badly, they do have financial consequences.
Yeah, it'll catch up with you eventually. I mean, I think when we first met, I talked about, I worked for Johnson & Johnson for a year, saw the workings of the empire from the inside. And yeah, I mean, one of the products that they launched, so I used to sell hips and knees for Johnson & Johnson, and one of the products that they launched whilst I was a sales rep for them was this product called the ASR, which has gone down in history as one of the biggest medical disasters, because they launched, there was, so the way the medical world tends to work is there's intense competition for market share. One company might launch a product, or they get wind that a company has got like a prototype in the market. They then all rush to get their version of it to market, so that they don't lose their customers to the new product. And so they launched this product too soon. It was, some of the testing results weren't looking great, and then they launched it globally. And then I guess after a couple of years, they realized that actually this wasn't for every orthopedic surgeon. Like, you had to be a highly skilled surgeon to use it. But there were, orthopedic surgeons who, a good orthopedic surgeon might do, I don't know, like 500 hips a year, but they were getting guys who were maybe doing 2 a year using this product that they just weren't capable of using. One of the biggest medical recalls in the history of the world, and their response in New Zealand was, well, you've got ACC, so just go and get it redone by someone. You'll be all right. And that was typically how the medical world seemed to look at it. It's like, yeah, it's like that classic story about, was it Ford Cars, who did the numbers on one of their braking systems that was failing, and they worked out that X number of people are likely to die, which means X number of dollars of lawsuits, but we're comfortable taking the lawsuits because we know that we can afford to pay them, whereas it's going to cost us more to stop the production. And that's how the medical companies work as well. They kind of go, look, if we launch it, what's, in many ways, their legal department probably sits in their marketing department, because like, well, we'll just consider this part of the marketing budget to get the product into the market. And yeah, I think not many people realize that that's how some of these big corporations that are considered ethical, just because they're in the medical world, doesn't actually mean how they're behaving though on the day-to-day. So yeah, kudos to you guys for doing that.
Well, like I'll just mention as well, and I don't want to focus on J&J and
in case we get
negative news.
In case we have lawyers.
Well, they have been in the news again recently with what's called a Texas two-step.
Yes.
They have separated out the company that has the talcum powder and essentially tried to bankrupt it to limit the amount they have to pay out under the lawsuits that are, the billions and billions of dollars in the lawsuits. And again, that's just, unacceptable behavior. When the parent company can pay the full liability that's owing, don't try and bankrupt it like an asbestos company. It's anyway. I don't want to focus on the negative, because, like I say, we don't company. Let's focus on the positive. And
the positive,
and like in our KiwiSaver, we're looking for better companies. We're looking for we have what we call sustainable themes, which is a chunk of our portfolio invested in things like renewable energy, energy efficiency, water technology, social housing, things that will have great returns, commercial returns for investors, but at the same time have, a positive for the planet. And, the whole focus of us is what, we call a duality, is make money without, ethically, but don't compromise on returns. And you can do that in all those things, even social housing, where in New Zealand it's an absolute disgrace for a first world country, but we have 30,000 people that are living in emergency housing, which could be temporary motels, cars, someone's garage, and that number's grown by about, 10,000 over the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's not going down, and we want to be part of the solution for that. So we're working with a charity, Community Finance, to help fund social housing and get people into permanent, dry housing for them and their family. And then you can wrap around social services to work on employment and school truancy and mental health and all those, those impacts as well. So, and your KiwiSaver can help bring those about and make a commercial return at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that's increasingly what people are realizing is that, you can do good and do well, I guess, by yourself. They're not mutually exclusive. Um, yeah, no, it's super cool what you're doing. So how do you choose then the positive investments? I'm guessing you've got some smart people who work out with algorithms and spreadsheets and stuff, or do you just kind of go more gut feel like, yeah, this sounds like good, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, look, it is for the listed companies. It is, there's a lot of science behind it in terms of there are thousands and thousands and thousands of companies in the global universe. So once you've done your exclusions, how do you build a portfolio of companies with a low carbon footprint, that look after their staff, that care about their interaction with the environment? And so there is science behind it based on the data streams that we use. There's also, I mean, you've got to build a proper portfolio. If you said, I just want the lowest carbon footprint companies in the world, you'd only be in the technology sector because
Yep.
there's low footprint. But you've still got to have transport, you've still got to have energy companies. So we have to put constraints to make sure we've got a proper diversification across industry. And same with geography. If you just wanted companies with the best diversity and the best governance, you'd probably only invest in Scandinavia. But again, we've got to put constraints around geography to make sure that we've got appropriate weights to North America and to Europe. So there's quite a bit of science behind it. That's in the listed space, and then in unlisted companies. So we're really big fans of long-term investments, including an allocation to private companies. So private companies are not listed on a stock exchange,
Yep.
and a lot more work in terms of finding them and due diligence for investing in them. But the good thing is, firstly, they can have outsized returns. So every wealthy family, every long-term endowment fund invests in private assets, private equity. And it's really hard for your average investor to get access to these assets because there's typically quite a high cost hurdle to get into them. But we're investing our KiwiSaver into them and giving access to for all New Zealanders. So one thing is you get access to potentially higher returns. The other thing is we can select companies that are not just going to get what we think are the higher returns, but also real world impact.
Yep.
So think of when you go to invest in a company listed on the stock exchange, like a bank or an energy company, you're not actually giving money to that company to expand. You're buying the shares of someone else. So those shares already exist. With a private company, it's called a primary market transaction. You are giving the money to that company to help it expand. And in a lot of cases, if they don't raise that capital from people like us, they can't expand. So just some examples, there's a company called Lodestone Energy. They are building 5 solar farms in New Zealand, and up north and in the East Cape. They will supply 2% of New Zealand's electricity. They've raised 150 million of equity and close to double that in debt from the banks. So significant investment running into hundreds of millions of dollars. They will supply 2% of New Zealand's energy, so helping decarbonise energy. Wellade is a company makes a biodegradable band-aid. Naitahu and Pathfinder, through our KiwiSaver, invested in them to help them launch into the US. Every band-aid in the world is made of plastic, ends up in the ocean, ends up in landfill. This one biodegrades within 4 months, made of New Zealand merino wool. So, things like that. Groove, a mental health app. Mint Innovation, really cool one we invested in this year, which takes e-waste, so laptops, TVs, and extracts metals out of them. So no mining involved. It's called urban mining, but no hole is dug in the ground, and it's a lower carbon footprint and a lower cost for extracting the metals. So again, we don't invest in mining companies. We need to invest in solutions so countries can have the commodities they need, and extracting it from e-waste is the way of doing it. So again, high impact on helping them expand. They've just launched a plant in Australia, and they're scoping out a plant in the US at the moment. So giving them capital to actually help them expand and have impact.
Nice. And of course, just to close the loop on Johnson & Johnson, their first product was the Band-Aid. That's how they started the company, was the two brothers, Robert Wood Johnson, and I can't remember the other one now, but yeah, they started with the Band-Aid. So is it Lucas? Is he still Woolade?
Yeah, Lucas
So,
from Tekapo. Yeah, but it's amazing. Every conversation seems to come back to Johnson & Johnson today.
It's
It's
so
crazy, but
ingrained in
yeah,
me. We'll just hopefully Lucas can stay true to his original roots, and when he's created a global medical device empire in 50 years' time, he'll we can be the ones who tell him about what happened, with the other
yeah,
with his
yeah. Just
predecessor.
stick to your mission, stick to
Stick
your
to your mission,
purpose.
yeah. Because
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's interesting, yeah. Like some of those, the original Johnson and Johnson, they had a really clear purpose. Like this band-aid is actually going to save lives.
yeah.
But it gets yeah. Have you seen the Painkillers documentary, or not documentary, the series on Netflix about the Sackler family and the
Look,
OxyContin?
I haven't seen the and I probably don't want to watch it, the actual series, but I've done enough
Yeah,
reading
you don't. Yeah,
to know what a train wreck for
yeah,
communities
yeah,
that whole story is. Yeah,
yeah,
it's awful.
yeah. But you can see how a glimmer of purpose and contribution can be quickly co-opted by money and
Wow.
greed and more, and then you increasingly lose sight of the impact. So yeah. So it must be. Do you find it tricky because presumably you're seeing a lot of cool companies that you probably want to give them all some money because they're all doing some good stuff. So yeah, how do you manage? I mean, all the companies that you just mentioned, I'd be like, yeah, sure. How much do you want? Which is why I don't work for you in that role. But so how do you work out? Yeah, like return versus
How do we allocate capital
impact and
essentially?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Look, it is tough. We see a lot of companies. Some you can knock out because there's no clear purpose-driven approach. It's just a good company.
yep,
There are others. So at one extreme, you got companies that are going to get great profits, but actually don't have
yep,
a real-world impact, so they're out. At the other extreme, you got companies that their business plan looks amazing in terms of potential impact, but actually they're never going to make any money. So
yep,
that's not a great investment either. So you're
yep,
trying to marry the two things, but it really comes down to the skill of our team and in terms of sourcing the opportunities, and it may be a good opportunity, but the price is too high, so you're
yep.
not going to get the returns you want because they're asking too much for the investment. But yeah, we're seeing a really good flow of ideas. I mean, it's amazing some of the work that's been done in New Zealand, and the companies here, extracting metals, for example, out of geothermal steam. The technology
Wow.
is well established for that. There's some really cool technology coming out of New Zealand. It's great.
That's yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start making that happen.
I know. I know.
um, so how did you get into starting a KiwiSaver fund? Presumably you've got a bit of a background in finance or some level or some degree, yeah. But how did you and Paul come up with the idea?
Okay, so backstory: I originally started as a lawyer and then spent
We
about a
we
decade.
won't hold that against you though.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just pretend I never said that. Worked in the UK for close to a decade and got into investment banking over there. Returned to New Zealand and met Paul, and
Yep.
we set up Pathfinder together back in 2009, actually. So we both met each other working at Deutsche Bank and set up in 2009. I think our big turning point for us was 2010. We set up our first sustainably themed fund, which is the Global Water Fund. So investing in companies that were providing products to help solve the world's water crisis, which could be desalination membranes or pipes and pumps or water metering technology. So, around the water industry. And the thinking behind that was, from a financial perspective, there's got to be tailwinds behind the water industry because water scarcity is an issue and climate change and a whole bunch of stuff. And sort of on the sustainability side is we want to be part of the solution for these problems, which are going to get worse around feeding the world's population, around wet parts of the globe getting wetter and dry parts getting drier. So the water fund to us just seemed like a fantastic idea. And we launched it in 2010, possibly a little bit before its time. The reception, at the time we were distributing our products through financial advisors, and they said to us, like, this is kind of for nutcase greenies. No one's going to invest in it. And they were kind of right, because even 3 years later in 2013, I think we just hit $2 million in the fund, which is like not even enough to cover the cost of the fund. The returns were actually starting to get, were proven to be quite good, which is why we started attracting people into it. But it was pretty hard going back then, talking about climate change and talking about water challenges for the world. I think a big change came probably about 2017 when everyone found they had controversial weapons and nukes and landmines and cluster munitions in their KiwiSaver. And I think that started waking people up to the idea that actually how I invest matters. It's what do I want my money invested in? How do I feel about that for my conscience? And this sort of married with our message, which is, there are 3 easy ways for everyone to think about how they can have an impact on communities. One is how you spend your time. So you can mentor young people, you can volunteer for charities. How you spend your time, how you spend your money, like everyone gets conscious consumerism and making those choices. And the third is how you invest your money. And we'd say how you invest your money is just as important as how you spend your time and how you spend your money. And so your choices on what you want to be invested in, what you don't want to be invested in, what corporate behavior you want to encourage or discourage is really important for helping shape the future. So around that time as well, a big move for us was, we were talking about investors need to focus on multi-decade approaches rather than looking at fund managers looking at the next 1, 2, 3 years. We need to be thinking in terms of decades ahead. And that caught the attention of Ngāi Tahu, who then gave us, entrusted us, I should say, with all of their international equities. So we managed a good amount of money for Ngāi Tahu, and we're deeply appreciative of the trust they put in us. But they were basically saying, you're the only fund manager that's talking the same language that we want to hear, of thinking intergenerationally and thinking long term. And from our perspective, if you extend the time horizon of your investment decisions, what you have to think about broadens considerably. And if you take to one extreme and say, I'm a day trader, or I'm a high speed hedge fund trader, and I'm in and out of stuff in seconds or minutes, or fractions of a second, you don't care about climate change, right? It doesn't impact your investment decisions. But you extend that out to 10, 20 years, suddenly your range of risks is wider, and climate change becomes really important as a risk within business and a risk for how the world is shaping. So, time horizon is really important to us. And I suppose the other thing that had a really, really big impact on me, which absolutely blew my mind, about the same time Ngāi Tahu were giving us their investment, was reading a study on the Mariana Trench and the Kermadec Trench, which are the deepest parts of the ocean. So they're 2 kilometers underwater. And now it should be pristine down there. You just imagine it's the purest ocean water. And but they sent probes down there and they found that toxins, man-made toxins, were just off the scale. Wow. And that kind of blew my mind in terms of the peaks of the Earth are impacted by climate change, which is, has been driven by the Industrial Revolution. So mankind's footprint on that. And then the depths of the ocean have really high concentrations of human pollutants. No part of the planet is safe from this. And we have to do better as investors to do what we can within the investing structure to bring change, or bring positive change, and not just avoid harm, but actually be positive in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, and we're already polluting space. I mean, there's space junk, and we haven't even actually got to Mars or wherever people want us to get to. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've already shit on our own doorstep, and it's not even our doorstep yet. Like, we're really good sometimes at that, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were well ahead of the curve, though, 2009, talking about, doing good for people and planet, because you sort of think, well, the idea of CSR, I think, only came in 2007. I think that's like when the term was first coined from a literature perspective. I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying that. It's certainly, it might even have been later than that, CSR. So yeah, I feel your pain, because it feels like I've been doing the same for the last 8 years. It's like, hey, there's this B Corp thing. It's not just about making money. You might want to consider the impact you have on people and community and planet. Yeah, sounds vaguely interesting, but I'm not really sure, what that really means. So yeah, you must be feeling pretty good about your decision makings, and you've obviously done a lot of groundwork since 2009 to put yourself in the position that you're in now, which is kind of what I'm feeling in some ways. It's like, cool, done a bit of mahi on this over the years, kind of know a few things now. Whereas I
Yeah.
imagine a lot of other investment firms, advisors are now trying to scrabble to get up with the play and go, oh, okay, we actually do need to think about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose from, one question I get asked a lot is, just tell me that one thing I need to do to make me more ethical or make my business more responsible. What's that one, how can I just flick a switch? And it's actually, we've been working on this for 10 years, and it kind of,
Yeah,
I hate using the word journey, but
it is.
it is like
Yeah.
that. It is like that. And like you're saying, you've got to do the hard mahi, and no one sees you doing it, and you're doing it in the background, and it takes you a long time. But you've got to do that, because you can't just magic up a great organization or a great product. It's actually the whole thought process and ethos and the the way it's constructed and the authenticity, or the extent that you want it to be genuine. You can't just make that happen. It takes time and hard work and sweat. And I suppose, one other side to it as well is, I differentiate between product and business. And I think it's easier for any business to create what looks like a green product, to look like a sustainable product. And, whether it's a manufactured product or a service or a financial product like ours, you can create that, the product features and describe it as sustainable. But what I'm really interested in is, do you really believe that what you're doing with that product? If you do, you'll put it into your business as well. And putting it into your business, which is where B Corp comes into it, right, is then challenging you to whatever principles you put in to build the sustainable product, put those into your business and make your business better as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think increasingly people see through the sort of the thin veneer of, we've got one little product that's less shit than our others. Aren't we amazing? Yeah, I think people can see that increasingly a mile off. And you can see, you can really sense the companies where it's embedded, and you kind of like, this is the old stick of rock. I don't know if it goes in the UK, the sticks of rock, and it's got like Brighton or Scarborough Beach or whatever, and every time you crack a bit of the rock off, the name goes all the way through. It's just like, you cut a stick of rock in half, it's got the same thing. It's the same with like a truly purpose-driven company. You cut it in half, it's there in the middle, it's all the way through. It's not just this little thin veneer on the outside that you crack like an eggshell. Oh, hang on a minute. Which is again what I found at the company that we will no longer name. But I feel like we need to have like, instead of like when actors can't say Macbeth, we need to have the Scottish company. We'll call them. And again, that long-term thinking, that's just something that, whether it's a westernized method of thinking, we just seem to have been captured by this idea of immediacy, and even more so with social media now. The thought of delayed gratification, even the thought of, I have to watch my TV program tonight and then I have to wait a week for the next episode. No, just watch all of them right now. There's not even a spirit of consideration that a week, I can't wait a week, like I have to do it all now. I remember talking to Dan Fowley and Abhinav from Trinio. I don't know if you ever hang out with those guys. They had a startup company here in Christchurch, got B Corp certified. They then got purchased by a Canadian B Corp, and then that Canadian B Corp got purchased by Salesforce. But having lunch with Dan and Abhinav and Melissa, who was the CFO, and they were talking about their interest in B Corp. And Abhinav was saying he's of Indian origin, or his family is, and he said, I think it was one of his cousins was working for an Indian company, and he was talking about how their smallest scale business plan is 100 years. Wow. And brilliant. The guys sitting there as a fast growing tech company are kind of daily stand up, almost hourly team huddle check in, and they're like, maybe we need to stop that, and maybe we actually need to think about what does this look like in 100 years. And I just think we've clearly lost that mindset. Whether we actually even had it, I don't know. But like you said, it massively changes your lens on what's important.
Look, it totally changes. It needs a mindset change, and I think that's the challenge for capitalism at the moment, right? Is if it was back in the early 70s when Milton Friedman was saying business should not serve a social purpose. It's just there to make money for shareholders and pay dividends, and it's all about short-term profits. And that has been the driving philosophy in the Western world for business for 50 years. And it's failing us, and we need to do better. And part of that is there's a bunch of things that need to change, but one of them is have a long-term lens with a broader mix of stakeholders other than just shareholders.
Yep.
And have more purpose in your business rather than trying to say our purpose is generating profit.
Yep. Yep. Totally agree. Which is why we're doing what we're doing.
But having said that, like, I'm still a capitalist in the sense that businesses need to be sustainable to make profit. For our KiwiSaver investors, I still want to make our investors as much money as possible. I just want to do it in a way that's beneficial rather than harmful. But profit in itself is not a bad thing. It's just match it with some purpose.
Yeah, I think one of the key differentiators for me is there's profit, but then there's profiteering, and I think that's where sometimes capitalism gets a really bad rap. I mean, what is it? Churchill said, I'm pretty sure it's Churchill, or it could be just one of those misattributed quotes, or I'm going to misattribute it. But there's that quote, capitalism is basically the least worst of all the other systems that we've tried. But it's because I have got a book that I'm trying to write on organizational purpose and kind of like the history of purpose. Because when you look back, if we were a small group huddled around, the campfire doing our things, John would be the expert in, I don't know, whatever you're expert in, playing the guitar, as we said beforehand, or trying to be. John's gonna play us out at the end. No, he's not. No, I'm 6'4", 115 kgs. I'm probably good at lifting heavy stuff around. We all have our contribution to the tribe, and then you kind of go, well, that then got extended to, if you think later on, the names that we gave ourselves were based on the contribution that we made. So you have Shoemaker or Schumacher, you have Fletcher, you have Cooper, so on and so forth. And then it seemed to be that at some point we lost the connection to the actual contribution that we're making. Then business suddenly becomes this vehicle where, like you say, you can put stocks and shares and you can buy in it, you can invest in it, and then I don't really care about what you are doing and how you're contributing. I just want you to maximize your financial return. And so the origins of commerce and profit are actually quite noble. And then you do a little bit of research on like the guilds and the associations where you had to meet a minimum standard of production in your standards. And you weren't allowed to rampantly profiteer. But yes, it's only really, from the bit of research I've done, it's only really in the last sort of 50 to 70 years when people started realizing they could do leverage management buyouts, and we can buy the company, we can get rid of all the staff, we can run it on a oily rag for 6 months and then flip it for massive profit and all that kind of stuff. It's actually relatively new, this concept of sort of profiteering. So it's interesting.
I do wonder if it goes back a little bit further in terms of essentially what you're talking about is skilled artisans who are a specialist and operate their own their own sole practice, essentially, as a blacksmith or jeweler. But once you got corporations with separate legal personality and external investors providing capital, that kind of changed. So that may be going back a little bit further in history than 50 years.
You're right.
Creating the separate personality. So I mean, you can go back to 1600 and the East India.
I was going to say, the East India Company. That's right.
Which had its own private army bigger than the British private army. Right? It's an insane part of history. But and that's legal personality provided to something that is not a human. It's it's sources of capital from passive investors plus people actually working in the business. It just gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah. Which that's an interesting point, which leads to there are some, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. There are some people that say you should put a monetary value on everything. So what is the cost of having bees in the world, because they're contributing to the pollination and the ability to make honey, or what's the value of all the water in New Zealand or in a geographic location. But there's another guy, a guy, Dr. Tim Kasser, who's, I think he's a psychologist, and he's looked into the connections between, money and happiness, and purpose and happiness, and so on and so forth. And I'm pretty sure it's him who said, the risk of actually putting monetary value on stuff that has no real monetary value is that it then does have a monetary value, and then it becomes in a hierarchy of, okay, well, bees are more important than water, so therefore actually water is less important, so actually, yeah, we can use all the water and get rid of it because it doesn't have as much monetary value. So do you think about the environment and people and communities in that kind of lens, or is that a concept that you've pondered on before?
That's quite a complicated area, right? Because on the one hand, companies that send carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or companies that put waste in a river, they're externalizing their cost, but that cost is not measured. And in some ways, like a financial measure is kind of a handy way of doing it. But then you've also got here in New Zealand, with allocating money to Pharmac, allocating money to drugs, you have to put a value on a human life or an injury that's going to be sorted by a drug or a treatment. And again, that's more complicated than just a dollar value. That's someone's life and someone's quality of life. But financial lens is the easiest way of measuring it. And then you look at measurement in terms of GDP. Of success or otherwise of a country is purely measured in GDP terms at the moment, which is the value of all production. But that doesn't measure time people give to charities or time people spend looking after loved ones. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's not measured in GDP and should be measured. And then the question becomes, how do you measure it? So, the challenge is, what is a better measurement system? But yes, putting a financial value on things will mean that you are directly comparing things. So you're, like in your case, is water more important than bees? You will drive that decision through what dollar value you decide to put on it. There's some interesting work that's been done by Impact Lab, which is Sir English, and working out where money should be spent in the social good that it generates, and putting a dollar value on that in terms of mental health outcomes, or people not going into prison because they because a charity is helping them with their improve their lives. Again, it's putting dollar values on behaviours, which is a hard thing to do, but it's hard to find another measurement system. I'm no expert in this space, Tim, so
I know, just curious.
I might leave it there, mate, but it is
that's good.
Super
I
interesting.
mean, it's because there's what is it? I think there's a tribe in Africa, the Hunza tribe or the Hansa tribe, which is like a really all the anthropologists kind of go and study them because they're one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer tribes that haven't been completely done over by Western, input. So they're what we believe to be the closest to what we've historically been. And you just kind of go to them, well, how would they put, well, A, would they even know what money is? No. And so how would they then even assign, well, what's more important, the bee or the water? Where they go, well, actually, it's all part of the same system. So even the fact that we're trying to measure relative importance of something is I sometimes feel that that's almost where we go wrong. It's like, actually, all of it is important, and you can't disconnect one from the other because it is all interconnected. So I don't know. Again, way above my pay grade, and it's a Friday afternoon, so.
I think we've made the world a lot more complicated, with the economic system that we have, the scale of population, the use of technology. Like, stuff is just more complicated, and we're facing problems that are really hard to face. There's probably indigenous thinking here in New Zealand that would help us answer and have really interesting perspectives on these problems.
And I agree, and I think the combination of ancient indigenous wisdom and thinking with modern technology, that's a really powerful combination. And I think in general, the modern world relies so much on the technological fix, the scientific, the rational, but we're missing the spiritual, the metaphysical, the personal, all of that stuff. And I think you put the two together, which we've never done, and you just wonder where that could take us.
Yeah, and look, on that as well, around technology, thinking of climate change solutions, so many people I speak to believe technology will save us, but it's actually human behavior change will save us, and mind shift change will save us. Waiting for technology that doesn't exist yet to be created and scale up that's not the answer, right?
Yeah.
But for that to be the go-to solution to just say, oh, technology has solved this, we actually don't have time to wait for that. We have
Yep.
to change our behavior. But
Totally.
it does seem to be a trap that we're fallen into.
There's a guy, Gus Speth, who was an environmental lawyer. I don't know if you've seen his quote, paraphrasing it badly. He's like, I used to think 10 years of good science would help us solve most of the environmental problems in the world. But I've basically realized actually it's not science that we need. It's an elevation of consciousness and spirituality and a new way of thinking. And that's 100% how I see it as well.
Yeah.
And it's to get pretty woo for a little while. Good old Carl Jung, one of the first sort of psychoanalysts, he talked about how the transition from the age of Aquarius to the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius is the time when humanity comes to its true potential in terms of consciousness. And I do, and we're in that transition period from Pisces to Aquarius, in terms of not astrology, but in terms of like actual movements of what are the words, astral systems. And yeah, he said, it's going to be this really messy period that could last up to hundreds of years, where humanity becomes everything that it could be. And I just think it's really interesting to reflect on that as companies like yours and mine and other B Corps are kind of in this real tension point of trying to get more people to think in a different way. And I think we'll look back when we're in our rest homes on Mars in 50 years' time, with Elon going, man, that was pretty cool when we managed to, we finally converted them all to think differently. Like, whoa, what a journey it was. But hey, we're here now.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think there's, without knowing much about the age of Aquarius myself, but there is this huge shift in politics, in society, and business from sort of old world thinking to new world thinking, and there's polarization going on, and there's tension and conflict, and it is hard and really messy at the moment, but it feels like we have an opportunity to move thinking to a better place. I just hope we do it without it being too messy and scrappy, and we do it in time to solve a whole bunch of the problems that need solving.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. So yeah, tell me a bit more about B Corp. When did B Corp come up on your radar? Because when you founded the company 2009, there weren't any B Corps in New Zealand. So I think 2012 was Eagle Protect, the first B Corp. Yeah. So how did B Corp pop up on your radar as a tool to kind of pull all of this and some of this thinking together for you?
Yeah, I met the team of Sharesies when they were getting started, and it was probably 2018, 2019. Brock mentioned to me about B Corp and described it, and I thought that sounds pretty cool. And they were most of the way through the process. And we work with Sharesies. 3 of our funds are available on the Sharesies platform.
Yep.
So we work quite closely with them for a number of years. And I looked into it when she encouraged me to, and it was like, wow, this is we want to be on this train. This is pretty cool. So we August 2020 we got certified, and are just going through our first recertification at the moment.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was still, I think, there's over 100, I think, B Corps in New Zealand now. We were somewhere in the mid-30s, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're just about 125, 126 last time I checked last week-ish.
Right.
Yeah. And so what was the sort of the journey like for you? Any highlights, good, bad, indifferent, otherwise?
Yeah, I suppose good, bad. And I suppose in terms of bad, not much bad other than the time it took to apply. Like, it was about a 12-month process, which is not your normal certification, and the intensity of the questioning into the business, I think, surprised me. The level of detail we had to go into. But on the good side, firstly, it made us think really, really deeply about our business, and it made us formalize a lot of the stuff that was in our heads, or a lot of the good behaviors we had anyway. It made us put structure around that. I think another good thing about it is you end up with this community of B Corps that you're part of. And you mentioned Eagle Protect. I went to Christchurch, didn't know those guys. I just sent a note saying I'm coming to Christchurch, love to meet another B Corp, and met those guys. And you can do that when you travel around the country. You can just hook up with people and hear really cool, inspirational stories from business founders or business leaders and members of their team on how they've got to where they got to, what their thinking is, and it just helps you with your own business, right? And so I think being part of that community is really cool. And then, you want to work with other B Corps. I mentioned we work with Sharesies, who are a B Corp. Quite a few B Corps have chosen us. Every company in New Zealand can choose a preferred KiwiSaver provider for their staff. So if there's someone joining who hasn't been in KiwiSaver, and they can choose a preferred provider rather than going to a government-appointed default provider. Quite a few of the B Corps have chosen us for that, which is just a really cool sort of community that we're building. So, the other good thing about B Corp is we've had, the best of the best for the world awards every year.
Nice.
We've been top 5% in the customer one, I think, the last 2 or 3 years. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool for us. That's cool. But look, it's B Corp is, I was talking earlier about the differential between your product and your business. And for me, B Corp just really helps us focus that lens on our business, and make sure we're doing things better in terms of thinking about stakeholders.
Yeah, because like you say, I guess you could have, as you said, yeah, you guys could have a great product. You're investing in all these great companies, but you could be treating your staff like rubbish. You could be really poor community citizens internally, and all the rest of it. And I think that's where almost some people get the wrong end of the stick about B Corp, because they think it kind of almost is about the product. And the number of times we've worked with clients and we're going through the governance section at the very beginning, and they go, "Oh yeah, we kind of do that for our clients." No. This is how do you do this in your office, in your company, for your team. Oh, okay, yeah. This is about you. There's going to be some questions about your product or your service, sure, but this is you. Yeah, and I think it's kind of like the belt and braces. It's like, yeah, we've got a great product, and that's possibly got some other certifications, or obviously, I'm sure yours has got to have some kind of accreditation, or your company is accredited in some financial, circle service. You know what I mean? There's got to be some financial industry authority that you are certified by to say that you can sell your products. I imagine, unless it's
we have a government regulator for a start, the FMA, to oversee.
So that's kind of like your core product and how you're doing it. Cool, like that's table stakes. But for you, it's like, well, how do we run the business, and that lens for your clients as well. That's super cool. So what does being a B Corp mean to you now, as an almost second time round B Corp?
So I think what it means is you just get a sense of your business is positive and doing something good and has purpose behind it. And why that's important is that's not just for me as a founder and co-owner, and for Paul, my co-founder. It's not just about us and what we're building. It's about how your staff feel and engage in your business. How our customers, the people who entrust us with their money to invest, our KiwiSaver members, how they feel about us, all the interactions we have in the industry and in the community. It gives us, and I think other people, a sense of there's something more to this business than just your average run-of-the-mill making money for its shareholders.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people look at it. It's like we just want to be able to demonstrate and prove that we're in business for the right reasons. And
internally, it just helps build a really strong culture. It builds we've got people who want to be there and who feel the mission that we're on, and B Corp is part of helping you build that team culture.
Nice. Yeah, I think you need to work on that. I don't think it's we always say to people, the risk is you can use B Corp as a framework, and if you just use it like a framework to answer the questions and prove the good that you're doing, that's useful. That's a really cool tool. But the key is to bake it into the culture, to embed it, to make sure that the whole team understand and know and have insight and understanding of what the framework is about, so that on the day-to-day, employees are empowered and engaged to know, oh, hang on a minute, actually the way we're doing that, based on B Corp, I actually think there's a better way to do that. And I understand why that's important, and I understand how that connects to my role and the purpose. So I think it's almost like a Simpsons episode. There's like layers and layers of the humor. There's like layers and layers of the of impact and purpose that you can use it as like a lightning rod or a galvanizing tool to bring all of this stuff around. the worst case scenario is it's a framework and an independent verification of good that you're doing, but there's so much
There's
more
a lot more
depth
to
to
it.
it that,
Yeah,
that you
totally.
can use it for. Yeah.
Totally.
And so what do you reckon, what does the future of B Corp look like? You're obviously hanging out with lots of B Corps, possibly investing in some B Corps, working with B Corps to get them, get their KiwiSaver, hanging out with you guys. So yeah, so where do you see, looking 10 years into the future, what does the world of B Corp look like for you?
The world of B Corp, I suppose if I'm thinking about what does the world of B Corp look like in 10 years, I'd say what does capitalism look like in 10 years? And for me, or what does capitalism need to look like in 10
Yep.
years is the question we should be asking. And what it needs to look like is something a lot closer to B Corp. So, the sense I get here in New Zealand is that there's so much momentum behind B Corp. There's so much more recognition of what it is and what it stands for. Instead of talking to people and them saying, "Oh, you're a B Corp," and what's that? A lot of people now have an understanding of exactly what it is. And so I think that is going to grow the community. The place I'd like it to end up, and I know a lot of businesses and financial services are looking at it. I'd like it to end up in a place where consumers expect it, and consumers want to deal with B Corps, and consumers want to have their money managed by someone who's B Corp, or buy from a B Corp, or get services from a B Corp, and so it becomes something you need to operate and continue succeeding. So we sort of forget in New Zealand that in the US and some European countries, the B Corp benefit corporation is actually a legal structure. And so it's embedded in law, right? You can choose to be a normal company and just focus on fiduciary duty to shareholders, or you can be a benefit corporation and focus on a wider group of stakeholders. And I think the mere fact that it's enshrined in law in that way, and people are given the options when they set their companies up, means this is going to grow over time, because there is this movement towards stakeholder capitalism, or doing capitalism better, and B Corp actually has the legal structure to provide for that.
Yeah, and we've already seen, like in the UK, they've updated the Companies Act to now include, directors, officers, shareholders may choose to consider the impact of their operations on people, planet, communities, what have you. And obviously, to be a B Corp now in this region and in others, you have to be willing and able to update your constitution to include an amendment that says we will at all times consider the impact, which is basically the same as that benefit corporation structure in the US. So yeah, it's really interesting. Increasingly, the business community is embracing the idea that, well, actually, yeah, why shouldn't we at a board meeting or senior leadership team meeting, instead of just going, yeah, we need to sack half the staff to maintain profitability. Well, actually, what impact does that have on our staff, on our reputation as a company, on the communities in which they live in? Is there a better way we can do this? Which I think, all round is just going to create better outcomes. So,
yeah, look, better decision making, absolutely.
Yeah,
less short-termism.
Yeah, totally. And so I know you've got to get a bus. We've only got a couple of minutes left. What's the future look like for Pathfinder? Hopefully you're going to get your research. I'm sure you get your research guaranteed in the bag. But other than becoming a 2-time B Corp, what's the future hold? Anything new and exciting? Any big investments you can give us a sneak preview on, or not?
Look, I might actually just talk a little bit about something else that we do in the business and the future of that, which is we've actually built into our business a model of giving, of donating. So, part of what we're trying to achieve as a business is not just invest ethically and give people great financial outcomes, but also ethical outcomes with the way they invest. But I've been on the board of Men's Health Trust for a decade and seen the challenges for charities in New Zealand, and it's probably a global problem, but the challenge of fundraising for projects, for overheads for the charity, and so much board time is spent working out the fundraising as opposed to working on the actual strategy for delivery. And we want to be part of that solution. So with our KiwiSaver, we give 20% of our management fees to charity, and we've democratized it in the sense that everyone who joins us chooses one of our 18 charity partners, and 20% of the fees they pay go to charity. So when we set our funds up, we charge the average fee in the market. So what I'm really clear about is this cost of giving comes from me and my co-shareholders, and that we charge the average fee, which is a fair fee to charge. we want to give 20% away. We ask our KiwiSaver members where it should be paid to. And the exciting thing for me is, that's just ticked over $1 million in terms of paid and accrued donations. And the exciting thing for us is we want to grow our KiwiSaver. I believe I can get to 2% of market share in New Zealand, which would be a $2 billion KiwiSaver. The giving we can do off the back of that is just massive in terms of the help we can give to charities through this long-term income streams. So, and I suppose when I go out and talk to different businesses, and I challenge businesses to think about how can you not just have a product that's doing good, but how can you embed it in your business model? And for us as a financial services business, this giving model is a really cool way of doing it. But there's, also buy one, give one. There's pay it forward models. There's koha, pay what you can afford models. But in your business model, can you actually embed good into your business model as well? And one of the challenges is when you're trying to mix purpose within a business, you've still got to be sustainable and profitable. So you've always got that challenge of you've got to be a proper business and make money to be sustainable and actually achieve your outcomes. So you've got to still be commercial in how you approach things, but I challenge business leaders to think about what does good look like in terms of embedding it in the DNA and in the structure of your business in such a way that if your business doubles, the amount of good you're doing doubles as well. So it's not just a matter of saying, we can give so much time to a charity. It's actually like your solution scales with your business growth. And then you become a larger business, you'll be having 2, 3, 4 times the impact.
No, that's super cool. And I just think, that's 100% the key. Is impact and revenue need to be, and completely linked. And I guess even potentially, how do you get exponential impact with growth? So that's a whole other podcast, I'm guessing. But it's we got a couple of other podcasts we need to organize, mate. I totally agree. Like, you just got to bake it in rather than it being an afterthought of, we'll just chuck some money, or we'll do a volunteer day and see how it goes. Bake doing good in. It's I sort of say it's almost like the analogy of putting salt and pepper in your omelette. If you put the salt and pepper in while the egg mix is still runny, and then you cook it, the salt and pepper gets really baked into it. Whereas if you make an omelette and then put your salt and pepper on the top afterwards, it's pretty easy to blow it off. You can wipe it off if you really wanted to. So or making a cake is like putting all the ingredients in and then baking it rather than putting it on top.
And it goes back to you talked earlier about the term CSR, corporate social responsibility. My challenge to businesses that are listening is your CSR like part of your marketing team? Is it out to the side, or have you shifted it into the core principles of your business? And there are too many businesses and business behaviors I've seen where corporate social responsibility is clearly an extension of the marketing department. It's really just about brand building, not about solving a social or environmental issue. And the challenge is to reorient it into the DNA and the core of the business.
Totally agree. I might know a guy who could help you do that if you're a person listening who's struggling with that.
Yes, Tim's the man.
Might just be able to help you on that.
Perfect,
mate. No, that's super cool. You got to run and get a bus. So
we're going to get a bus. It's an electric bus.
So
it's really
look at that.
Really cool. It's called
you're crushing it all around, aren't you?
It's called the Mahu Express. It goes from downtown Auckland to Warkworth, and they've got 2 electric buses. It's awesome. So there we go.
Super cool. Or maybe next time we could record the episode while you're on the bus, and we could bring in like crowdsource some answers to some stuff.
Brilliant.
But no, John, thank you so much. I always love catching up with you. You're just an awesome guy, full of positivity. You're making big waves. You're making some big changes. I have no doubt that you'll get to 2% market share, if not more. So keep on doing what you're doing, man. Love it.
Nice one. Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.